Konnichiwa. This is the Shogunstein, and this is a book review. Actually, it's kind of three book reviews, but mainly it is the review of The Life and Death of Stuart Adamson, Stay Alive by Scott Rowley. But also within this review, I'm going to talk about the autobiography of Kenny Aronoff, Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll, and also Justin Currie from Amitri, the Tremolo Diaries. So this review might be a little all over the place, but I think I have to talk about all three of these books that I read at about the same time, involving some of my favorite music of all time. Stuart Adamson from Big Country. He was the lead singer. He unfortunately died in 2001. Kenny Aronoff was the drummer for the Best Years of John Mellencamp. He's also drummed for many, many other big names in music, including some of my favorite bands, John Fogerty, the Bodines, so many different groups he played the drums for. Amazing artist, session artist, been on many, many big hit songs that you wouldn't even know that he was playing the drums. But one of the, if you know music, Bob Seger he played for. So Kenny Aronoff, the famous drummer. Come on, Jack and Diane, that drum part, amazing. And then my favorite band of all time, Amitri, Justin Currie, the Tremolo Diaries. This was his, again, I don't want to say autobiography. It's more, some writing he did when he was on tour with Bare Naked Ladies and Semisonic, a tour that I actually saw out in the desert in California. Also when he was with the Simple Minds tour throughout Europe. It's also about the same time that he discovered that he was suffering from Parkinson's disease. And the Scott Rowley book, where this review, originates, just came out. Unfortunately, this book is only in the UK, so I had to order it from a UK publisher and have it sent here to the States. Again, Big Country, and again, maybe that's part of the issue here. In the United States, one-hit wonder in the Big Country, but in the UK, a much bigger band with, their first three records were huge with way more than one hit. And then there were issues after, which the book deals with. So just a little background here. When MTV was new, and 1983, I would have been like 11. One of the first big songs for me on that new thing called MTV, actually two songs, obviously the biggest, In a Big Country and Fields of Fire. Also, I kind of came into Big Country in another weird way. I was really into Pete Townsend solo at that age. It was Pete Townsend was my favorite, even before I got into The Who. I liked Townsend solo. So Tony Butler, the bass player, and Mark, the drummer for most of Big Country, were also session musicians who played for Pete Townsend. So around the same time that I was into records like Empty Glass and All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes, which Tony Butler and Mark played on, I discovered Big Country. And one of my most fond memories of my youth and music was the New Year's Eve, 1983, 1984, living in Levittown, watching Big Country New Year's Eve concert on MTV from Glasgow. Big Country in the U.S., unfortunately for most, would be a one-hit wonder. They had plenty of other good music, but they were just a band that had a lot of bad luck as well, whether it be things with not getting onto TV for Live Aid, a big comeback album, Fragile Thing, where there was some craziness with the size of the CD box, just some bad direction that they one at one record they try to, they brought in the producer who did, I think We Built This City, and they try to change the sound up a little bit. So they were just one of these bands that was hard to categorize, and they just should have been bigger. Again, in the UK they were still pretty big, but in the US they should have been bigger. Stuart Adamson took his own life in 2001, very tragic, and currently there's actually two versions of Big Country touring with different singers, and one version has the guitarist, the other version has Mark, the drummer. So there's a lot of drama even after Stuart Adamson passed. So the autobiography, this biography, Stay Alive, it was a very interesting read, and I learned a lot of things. So again, let me go back to Big Country here for a minute. So Stuart Adamson had originally been with a punk band called the Skids, which also was a much bigger band in the UK than in the US. So he'd been making music from a young age. In the days before streaming, I kind of lost touch with Big Country for many, many years. So again, as, an American fan, I knew them from The Crossing. That's basically it. The Crossing, if you haven't listened to that record, is every track on it. It's amazing. Maybe that was one of the problems for Big. That first album is so good. I don't know how a band makes a second or a third. And their second album, Steel Town, is excellent also. But the first record is so good. How do you top it? How do you top our first record that's so good, and they were so young? So there was a lot of years that Big Country was still around, but I hadn't heard anything from Big Country since The Crossing. I didn't know about Steel Town. I didn't know about Buffalo Skinners. Buffalo Skinners came out like 93, 94. Amazing album, but where was I 93, 94? I was in college, and you had the grunge coming. So fortunately, with streaming, I was able to get back into Big Country and learned a lot more about their music beyond The Crossing, and discovered many, many good songs from them. But I really don't know much about what happened from, again, seeing them on MTV, 1983, 1984, until I rediscovered the band, several years ago, again, after Stuart Adamson had taken his own life. So the book, which is a very, very good, I read it very quickly, and that tells you something. I read it, it was really interesting. I didn't know much about the Skids, and, the book, went into, it's very early heavy. So there's stuff about, again, him with the Skids, stuff about the making of The Crossing, stuff about the second record. Maybe one of my biggest criticisms is I feel once we get past, the Seer, the rest is kind of, to me, rushed. I would like more about, driving to Damascus and that whole Fragile thing. And, even more about, the Buffalo Skinners. And there's a couple records in there that I don't even know, I don't even know anything about that record, Why the Long Face. I couldn't tell you one song on that record. So I felt that the book, I would have liked this book to have been longer. And I don't know if there's, stuff that was cut, but I would have been more interested about those more, to me, the lost years. Again, The Crossing, I knew about, and Steel Town I didn't know about. So that was good. Steel Town was a record I didn't first listen to until Spotify. But I would have liked more about, again, let's go past the Seer up until, unfortunately, his death. Now, the question that I raise here, well, first let's talk about musically. And I feel some of the decisions that the band made here, they talk about the tour in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, some of the directions with some of the producers they took after the crossing, whether Steel Town was too British, too dark. Apparently there's another mix of the seer, which is even supposed to be even better. Again, what happened after the Buffalo Skinners? Why weren't they able to capitalize on that? There's a lot of things here that it just seems like the band made, got kind of screwed by the record company, got screwed by some of the producers, and went in some wrong directions at the wrong time. And that takes me to, and a little bit about Amitri with Justin Currie. Not that the Tremolo Diaries don't cover this aspect of Amitri, but they were another band that Big Country, not only just being Scottish, but also just a band that should have been bigger and just, maybe made some choices on records and things that just ended up, not being good for, where the band should have been much bigger. And you can blame it on, yes, you can say the producers should have done this, the record company should have done that. But to what extent did the members of the band consent to, what was being, done? When I listen to some of the, when they try to sound a little more American, and there's the video, and they got the two background singers, and they got the long hair, the mullets. It just, and there's like a wind machine. It just seems, it doesn't seem like Big Country. It's not a bad song. It just doesn't seem like Big Country. So the reason that I have the Kenny Aronoff book here, Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll, which, again, as an autobiography, this is like a rock and roll book. This is like a book, exactly what the title says. This is a book about all he worked with so many people and so many crazy stories. This is like what I expect a rock, especially a guy that's from the late 80s, 90s. This is what I expect a rock memoir to be. But back to Big Country, one thing that comes across in this book is Mellencamp, who I love Mellencamp. I am a huge fan of Mellencamp. One thing that comes across in this book is that Mellencamp can be kind of an a-hole. A-hole to the band, a-hole to the producers, an a-hole to the producers, the people in the band, to the record company. But that's how it seems like Mellencamp ended up being very successful, because he didn't let the record company and these producers boss him around. Whereas it seems like in reading Stay Alive, it seems like, the band in a way got kind of taken advantage of by the record company and the producers. And obviously it's a corrupt business. The whole mess with the Fragile Thing, which is a great single. But, the size of the box, it killed their comeback over how many cuts there were in, the CD single. Who even remembers CD singles? So what comes across, again, just think about, Johnny Cougar, right? And when he came out as Johnny Cougar, I Want a Lover Who Won't Drive Me Crazy, that era. And Mellencamp just didn't let him do that to him. So Mellencamp comes across in this book kind of like an a-hole. But maybe the whole fact that he got his name back, the fact that he's now John Mellencamp, he's not John Cougar, they changed his name. Maybe that's what they needed to be. Maybe, at the height of Amitri's power, they needed to be maybe more a-holes. Maybe Big Country needed to be more of an a-hole. I just got the impression from, especially the chapters on Mellencamp, that Mellencamp, yes, kind of like an egomaniac, not necessarily I mean, I love his music. I wouldn't want to hang out with him. But maybe that's what you have to be in order to control what you want your music to be. Is what I'm getting at. And that comes across in this book. The other thing that I'm going to point out to here with the Justin Currie book, and again, the tour he talks about in here, I saw. So I've been a Del Amitri fan since, like 88, 89. And, when I saw them, I guess in 97 in New York at the Supper Club, I didn't know that was going to be the last time I was going to see him for a long time. So the band went on hiatus for a long time. And then they came back. They put out a terrific, Fatal Mistakes is a terrific record. They did a tour. They came here to Phoenix. They played at the Crescent Ballroom. Fantastic concert. The next year, I was very surprised to see them on, they were the third act. They were the opener for the opener on a Bare Naked Ladies tour that also had Semisonic. I like Semisonic a lot too. And I didn't think I'd get to see that Del Amitri again. I saw them, and again, Justin Currie is battling Parkinson's right now, and he's putting up a tremendous fight, and he's still doing music. But I saw that tour before the diagnosis, and it was. I just hadn't seen them in so long. I saw them in '97, and to see them, I guess it was 2022, 2023, and they did a full concert. They played new songs, old songs. It was fantastic, but I didn't know they were going to come around again on this, again, as the opener for Bare Naked Ladies. And they came out to the desert, played one of the Indian casinos in California. So this tour that Currie talks about, I saw the show. And it meant a lot to me because I never thought I was going to get to see Del Amitri again. So in reading this book, actually, I didn't read it. This one I listened to on the audio book. Same thing, actually, I got to be honest here, too, with the Aronoff book. I did both of these on Spotify. And Aronoff read the book. Justin Currie read the book. And that, on both of those, I'm going to say definitely listen to the audio version. That's the way to do it. But Currie, on this tour, again, they're the third act. Opener for the opener, so they're playing like 40 minutes. They're not going to these, huge venues. They're in a bus. He just found out he had Parkinson's disease. I don't know the full story, but I guess I don't know if it's his common law wife or his longtime girlfriend, but she's suffering some kind of medical issue as well around this time. I don't know the details, but he went into it in the book. It's kind of bleak. And again, being diagnosed when you're a musician and you're diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and how that affects your playing, your singing, and he's battling through it. But this was a tough listen. And also, and this is where I'm going to go back to Stuart Adamson, you find out some stuff about people that you really, really like, again, musically. I don't know Justin Currie as a person. Well, after this book, I know him as a lot more as a person. I don't know Stuart Adamson as a person, and I don't know Mellencamp as a person. I know their music. I know Mellencamp's music, Del Amitri music, big country music are very, very important to me. Those songs have gotten me through a lot. But there's the old adage, sometimes you don't want to know your heroes. And I guess that's what I'm getting at here. So in a way, I think in terms of Stuart Adamson's, his early life, the issues he had with drinking, the alcohol, some of the way that, he was with other people in the band, some of the money issues. And then, Justin Currie's, views on a lot. And again, I have to understand that as he's going through what he's talking about here, he had just found that he had Parkinson's. His girlfriend is ill in the hospital, so he's probably not in the best frame of dealing with a lot of stuff. And again, with Mellencamp, you're dealing with a record company that changing your name, trying to make you into something that you're not. So it's easy for me to say, yeah, sometimes, people came off in not such a good way, but I'm not dealing with the things that they're dealing with. But to bring this all around with the Justin Currie book, and certainly with Stay Alive, did I find out too much? And I guess that's the big thing. Would I have been better off not reading this? Would I have been better off not listening to this? Would I have been better off just knowing Justin Currie for those amazing Amitri songs that I've been listening to since I was a senior in high school? Would I have been better off with not knowing as much about Big Country as I did, just kind of that memory of watching that 1983 New Year's concert? I don't know. And I guess that's the dilemma with some of these books. Am I better off just not knowing? So let me take that around to another band. I've been listening. My most favorite recent band is Lord Huron. Been listening to them for probably since about 2011, 2012. Seen them 8 times. Outside of the music, I know nothing about the people in Lord Huron. They have very little social media presence outside of the music and the thing they do with the band. I don't know much about Ben Snyder, the singer and songwriter. I don't know anything about the other guys in the band. I know the music. Outside of that, I don't know anything. Am I better off with that? Am I better off not knowing anything about Justin Currie other than the Amitri music? Would I have been better off not knowing anything about Stuart Adamson other than, great songs like Ships, or Chance, or any of these amazing songs? I Walk the Line, these songs that I love so much. Would I have been just better off to only know the music as opposed to knowing all this personal information? I guess that's what I'm getting at here. And that's the dilemma. So, excellent book. Again, Critis, I would have liked more on some of the other things past, the Seer. But I enjoyed the book, read it quickly. Justin Currie's narration and his writing's amazing. His song lyrics are amazing. But again, I think I would have been better off not knowing so much. There was a time many years ago when Justin Currie, was on Twitter more, and I used to be on Twitter, and I followed him on Twitter for a little bit. And again, I felt the same way. I just knew I was finding out too much, and I ended up not following him on Twitter anymore. I love Justin Currie's music. He's probably my favorite singer-songwriter of all time, but maybe I would have been better off not knowing as much as I did. Kenny Aronoff, this book was fun. I enjoyed this. This was a rock and roll book. This is what I expected, a rock and roll book. I loved all these stories of all these amazing musicians that he worked with. But big takeaway, maybe you have to be an a-hole like Mellencamp in order to not get taken advantage of. I think Big Country could have been better with better producers and a better record company and changing all these record companies. I think Amitri should have been bigger. Maybe they needed to be more like, Mellencamp and just, kind of be like an a-hole to some of these record company people. Anyway, 3 books. Again, I'm going to recommend all 3 of them. Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll, Kenny Aronoff. And again, I recommend listening to him narrate it. The Tremolo Diaries, very well written, but just be prepared to possibly learn more than you wanted to know. And the same thing with Stay Alive, Scott Rowley, Stuart Adamson of Big Country. This is the Shogunstein Out.